Good evening, Western Standard viewers. We're delighted to have with us this evening Erika Barootes. Now, Erika, you have been a conservative activist for a number of years in Alberta politics, and I think at one time you were the founding president of the United Conservative Party. You've also worked at the highest levels within the provincial government as a special advisor to Premier Smith. Mm-hmm. And you're still Alberta's Senator-Elect. Is that right?
I am still waiting for the appointment.
All right. Well, for those who are recent arrivals in Alberta, we do try to choose our own senators, and Ms. Barootes is Alberta's choice to go to the Red Chamber when the time comes, and the time may come when the next government arrives, because you won't expect to get appointed by a Liberal, not being a good Conservative. You're also an entrepreneur, and you've launched the first of its kind applied politics and public affairs diploma through Macquarie College. I want to ask you about that in a few moments, but before we get to that, it seems that whenever Alberta Conservatives get together, you're there. And can we just talk a little bit about Danielle Smith and what she's doing and how she's doing? Let's start with this, just for fun. We've just had a $4 billion surplus. Do you think that Premier Smith should have maybe given us a break on the gas taxes?
You know what? I actually have a little bit of a different view in the gas tax, because it did end kind of phased out in this last budget. I think that there's always opportunities to find affordable measures and to ways to put money back into Alberta's pockets. But when it comes to the gas tax, I actually think the government should have phased it out earlier. And the reason I say that was because this was a relief tax. This actually was supposed to be a short-term measure as opposed to a forever tax. So if this government, I wouldn't argue if the government wanted to always have the 13 cents off taken away at the pumps, but that wasn't the intention of this policy. So I do think the government could look at other ways to find affordability. When it comes to the gas tax, I actually think that they left it too long, that us Albertans forgot that it was a relief in a short-term crisis, and then kind of became accustomed to it. So when it came back on, it felt like an additional tax as opposed to the restoration of something that was actually never meant to stay longer. I think they should have phased it out so that Albertans didn't have that expectation, or that it just became the norm. So I've actually been critical that the government should have phased it out before the budget, because it actually didn't help the message when they didn't put in, reduce the personal income tax.
Well, Erika, I think that's probably the proper answer, but having just driven back from BC and filled up close to $2 a liter, I'm still not buying it. But anyway, let's move on to...
I tried to convince you.
You did. Look, disagree with me if you like, but I think provincial governments stand or fall on how people experience the provincial health system. There are other things, but basically that's where people's minds go. So I know that the Premier has launched a massive revamping of the Alberta health system, but I don't know whether a lot of people really know what it is that's being attempted and why it is being attempted.
Well, I think the first thing is that, Premier Danielle Smith came in at a time where every Canadian, and in this case, Albertan, can agree that the healthcare system wasn't working. So I do think that there is a need for significant reform, or to look at it differently. Now, to your point, as a politician, it will be, I think, her legacy, whether that's a good or a bad thing, because she's making a generational change. And that's not common, because as politicians always operate off of 4 years, and this is probably, to fully reform it, going to take, the 8 to 10. So when it goes to 2027, she's going to have to find ways to prove that these robust changes, such as, first firing the entire AHS board, putting in a new leadership team, putting it to 4 pillars of government, as opposed to AHS kind of being that one point of contact, because they saw it as a clog in the wheel. So they kind of are breaking it up into different sectors so that your access to care goes into one of those four pillars, and they all operate in synergy but also complementary to one each other. So that's kind of her intention with how she's structured the new body, is that AHS was always intended to be hospitals, and it kind of got outside of that. And I think that that's one of the places where we saw, slow response times with EMS, and not the highest support for frontline workers. Now, coming back to the challenges, though, as I was saying, is that it is going to be difficult for this government to have, KPIs when they're going to the ballot in the next election. So I think that they're going to have to really focus on some of those things they campaigned on, which is reducing wait times and access to a primary caregiver. And I want to say primary caregiver because I think we all default to like family doctor. But what the government is looking at is actually, how do you get a point of care? So that could be a nurse practitioner, it could be within a clinic, and that, getting care and having that access point is the most critical thing. So I do think that they're taking quite a robust approach to this. And again, I think for them, they're going to have to find some low hanging fruit of return on investment that they've done and all of these large changes. Because it is going to be a ballot box question, as you mentioned, it always is. So they're going to have to figure out how to talk about the long-term gains of this reform and then the short-term gains.
Now, I could ask you how you think it's going, and you would tell me. But if I were to ask,
I'm not. I was going to say, I'm not a pundit anymore. I get to, or a staffer. I get to say what I want.
Yeah, no, but that's why you're here.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely. But if I were to ask a person on the street, they'd probably say, "Well, it's still like going into Solzhenitsyn's cancer ward. It's grim. It's awful. You have to wait for hours. People tend to view the state of the health system by their own personal experience of it. So, what hope do you have that the frontline experience is going to improve for people, and above all, those people who need? I'm talking about need kind of surgeries that you have to book months, even years in advance. What's happening there?
I would give them, maybe a minus, B plus on how they're doing and managing all this. I do think that there's a really negative narrative out there, like you said, about wait times. We've seen some government announcements on that. We've seen government announcements of recruiting of nurse practitioners or changing clinic models or reaching agreements and starting to have a better relationship with the Alberta Medical Association. But you're right, they're also operating off of this perception of what that experience. Now, I've been fortunate. I haven't had to go use an emergency room or take one of my kids there in several months. So I can't talk about the specifics, but I do think that they need to focus, on what each region in our province needs. And so is that focus the recruitment of family doctors, especially in rural? And then again, I think that the wait times and the state of the emergency rooms are not amazing across the entire province, but specifically in those large and urban centers. And I know that we'll probably talk about, the other challenges with recovery and addictions and how that also adds to your emergency wait times. But I think that I truly believe they're headed in the right direction. They've had some hiccups. I don't think they've nailed it on the communications of exactly what they're doing and how it's not just like the money that you're putting in it, because I can't fathom, what $2 billion does. But I think that they need to start talking about what it actually is doing for individuals and individuals in different regions across the province, because the situations are very different from, north, central, and south.
Yes. Well, I know people do tend to have a very high expectations, like going in to get to make a purchase. You sort of go in and you get seen and you get fixed and you're on your way. That's what people want.
But
it's obviously more complex.
I do want to say, I think a lot of people, look at this and it's like, what's the challenge? We need to put more money into the healthcare system. And I don't think that that's the right solution. I think it is, how are we investing? Where are we investing? And so, even when the government brags about the most, the highest level of investment in healthcare, I, as an Albertan, am more concerned with, okay, but where is it going and what is it going to address? Because we all know the issues. And I think the left is horrific at this, where they just they think just throw money at a problem, and that goes for education and healthcare. And doctors should have a competitive wage, but they shouldn't be where they were 10 years ago in this province, making 17% more than any other jurisdiction, right? Like, I think there's conversations on par, but also, can there be people that are working on their teams that can help solve some of the challenges of volume too? So, I could talk about healthcare all day, but I think it's important that a big differentiator of where Alberta is divided is a lot want to throw money at the problem and hope that that will fix it. And I think on the right, we are always looking for efficiencies, good use of tax dollars, and then again, that let's provide the best quality care for those in need.
Yep. Okay. Well, look, the second biggest expenditure in the provincial budget is education. And I noticed that something like 10% of Alberta children are in some kind of alternative education, whether it's, charter schools or homeschooling. That's a lot. That, to me, and by the way, I think we both know about Kaylin Ford's school, has something like 2,500 people waiting to enroll their kids. There's a huge demand for the classical education that she is offering. Now, what's going wrong in the education system that so many people want to take their kids out of it?
We have actually, one of my stepdaughters is in public education because she's in an immersion program, and another is in a Catholic program, both in Edmonton. And I cannot tell you the night and day experience that we even have in the Catholic versus the public school system. Less PD days, obviously smaller classrooms in the Catholic. Like, it's interesting. I think what's happening is, again, we're a province, and I am personally a person that believes in choice in education. And if something's not delivering to the standards in which you want to have set your child up for success, I love that we have all these options: independent schools, charters, public, Catholic, I think it's so great that we offer all of these things. But it's really unfortunate, Nigel, to what you're saying, is that we have a public system. We're not the US. It's not the same where you have to pay for your child to have a good education. We do offer how our tax dollars are allocated, I think, properly, because we want to equal the playing field for every child. But at the same time, if you're a parent and you want to give a good opportunity, or you're realizing, and I think in the most case, that the public school system isn't teaching or offering or coaching and developing students in the way that parents, our generations had. And so that's a shift away from that to find the best alternative. And I would love if we could hit reset and the public school system was everything that everyone wanted, but I don't think that's the case. And I don't think that there's a return to it.
Well, let me put this in a provocative way. I say that the education system is dominated by progressive left-wing unions, both in the teaching profession and in the administration, and they're preparing the next generation of NDP voters, even while we're sitting here talking about it. How say you?
Well, I would say there's a lot of things that teachers are saying in classrooms, and we hear it at the dinner table, that isn't in their scope. It isn't in their, they're not there to teach their perspective. They're there to teach curriculums. So, I'd love to be able to argue with you on that point, but unfortunately, again, I think that's where, whether it's curriculum, whether it's values and beliefs being shared in the classroom, I think that there is a big shift, unfortunately. And again, like I said, we hear very different messages of kids that are in relatively the same grades from a public and a Catholic school as well. So I can't disagree with you there.
I want to come back to the education part of it in a few moments and what you are doing with Makami College. But before we do that, let's just talk about Mr. Nenshi. I am rather surprised that he has not yet found a seat to run in. And I was equally surprised by an opinion poll that came out last week showing that he was actually trailing the Premier by 14 points. Now, that doesn't surprise me because I know him and I know the Premier. But on the other hand, I don't think that's what the NDP were expecting. Clearly, he has a wonderful ability to organize and mobilize. He's a great persuader. But I wonder if people are looking back at his time as mayor of Calgary and thinking maybe he's not the CEO we want, or maybe they just don't know about him at all. I mean, if you were in Edmonton, you probably wouldn't have been on your mind much. How do you think that's going for the NDP?
Mhm. Well, I think that the NDP, the new membership, will say, because they had a significant, and I'll commend them on how much their party grew during this leadership race. They haven't had one in quite some time, and that, I mean, it's not atypical to have a significant surge. However, I think that where the party is going to have a lot of wedges is on the point that, one, you and I know Nenshi, and I'm more than happy to watch him for 3.5 years show the rest of Alberta his personality and his characteristics and how he loves increasing taxes and all of those things that will really come to light in when he's in the spotlight as the leader. But I do think that the NDP, voted not based on their values and beliefs, but more so on the desire to win. And they looked at Nenshi, or someone that maybe didn't have a political home in Alberta, bought a membership, voted for Naheed Nenshi because they saw him as the best competitor against Danielle Smith. And that's not uncommon within politics. But I think what's going to happen is it's going to come to, he doesn't have the values of an NDP, or he is, liberal light, and he's gonna have, his color's purple. You don't get purple from orange, red. You get it from blue and red. And so I think he's going to have a lot of challenges within his membership. And again, I think a lot of people expected big things out of him right away. And from my understanding, he hasn't come out doing really anything. I know he's been meeting with industry behind closed doors, but he's not coming out, and didn't during his election, on policies. So I think people were excited about him. I think that they compromised maybe what they believe the NDP to be. And now they're going to have to deal with the consequences. So I would love to fast forward a year from now, and when all those memberships expire, see how many actually stick around, as well as what happens when this party has to decide if they're going to leave their federal partner, because that's a lot of resources. That's a lot of supports that I think Nenshi will take for granted, and I'm more than happy to watch him do it.
If I were a frivolous person with a better sense of humor, I would imagine a conversation between Naheed Nenshi and Tommy Douglas, because I don't think they're both NDP, but they're not the same kind of people at all, are they? Look, Macami College, you have just been, I think you've been in the job now for 3 months. And
well, I've been on the job for a year, but I haven't been able to talk about this program because it's under legislation. You can't promote it until it's been approved.
Okay, well, I'm glad the Constitution applies in Alberta, at least. So look, this is a program on public affairs and doing policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What exactly are you? What are you training the next generation of conservatives, or what's it all about?
Well, hopefully we have some conservatives in the program, but no. So this was not my brainchild, but I'm very happy that I got to be the creator of this program. So go back, we won't say how many years, but I took poli-sci, and the only reason I could get a job was because I was, the kid that on Thursday nights before going to the den, I went to U of C. I was at a boardroom table in Calgary Varsity. My connections, I did summer internships I did with Ron Stevens. So like the reason I got my job or got into politics and actually found my home early on was because of my involvement. And so this is the applied politics. So you learn some of the foundations you would learn at poli-sci, but I graduated learning how to write a 10-page paper. Never have I ever had to do that. I had to learn how to write a briefing note, how to do stakeholder relations, events planning, how to brief a minister, manage their calendars, conflict resolutions, policy analysis, campaigns and elections. As you know, I've been in many war rooms. So this program is actually going to teach individuals that really want to get into the game of politics or policy or political affairs, public relations, all of those types of things, breaking this down in a 2-year diploma program, starting with, and this might be a good thing for some university students coming out of, our elementary public school program, how democracy works, how the Constitution and the rules of government work, what federalism truly is supposed to be. And so it'll go through all of that and teach students so that they can get jobs in political offices, government, constituency offices, public affairs firms. You could even go into the not-for-profit. We're going to teach some fundraising, stakeholder relations, as I mentioned. So it's going to build what I wish my skill and toolbox had when I graduated after 4 years, but in a two-year program with 3 practicums. So you're also getting some real life experience to see too, like, are you fit to work at the ledge, or are you more 1 degree of separation? But it should equip everyone with the things I wish I knew and paid the money for.
Is this a little bit like what the Manning Institute was trying to do for its particular part of the market?
Well, I did engage with them, and I will give Preston Manning credit in conversations I've had, not directly with him, but an important one was actually professional and political ethics. And so that's a course that we'll have because of the need to be able to navigate that, both from your values, beliefs, your political parties, et cetera. So it does have something like that. It does take from what I think Carleton is trying to do in their master's program of political management. But again, you don't need a poli-sci degree, and you don't need to do this in a master's to learn what I think everything that I've learned from working for politicians to working, in the party or on the outside. So yes, the goal is, obviously MacMe College is a public institute. So, we welcome individuals of all stripes, but I would be honest, I would love to see some strong conservative campaigners and strong conservative staffers coming out of the program.
Well, that is something to aspire to. And quite frankly, even if they're not conservatives, if they at least understand that there is a constitution and that the constitution would be respected and that there's a way of doing things, that would be a huge improvement on what we're seeing. Erika, I really want to wish you all good luck with that and good fortune. Is there anything else you want to tell us about Alberta politics? Because we're rapidly running out of time, and I want to thank you properly, but your last point. Yeah,
so 2 quick things, because I never met a microphone I don't like. If people are interested, come over to MacAmi, MAKAMI college.com to learn more about the program. We'll be doing our first pilot in September. So I'm doing curriculum development day and night right now. But the other thing is just to watch the characters. I think this is going to be, a monumental period in our history of 2 very strong communicators, but who can do the inside work with their party? Who is going to be able to be true to the values and beliefs of what their base is, as opposed to sometimes what they believe? And I think this is going to be one that I'll be using case studies for years to come in the applied politics program, because they're very different. People like to paint Naheed Nenshi and Danielle Smith as very similar. They were in a classroom together once upon a time, but they're so different in how they communicate, how they interact, and how they are, the captain of a team. So I think that's going to be very telling of how 2027 is going to go.
Thank you so much for this, Erika. I want to wish you all good fortune, and I don't think it's going to be good luck. You're going to make your luck as you go along, but what you are doing at MacAmi College seems the absolute best use of the skills you've accumulated so far, and it could be of profound significance for the future. Thank you for coming on the show. Been great to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, for the Western Standard, I'm Nigel Hannaford.